Welcome to another edition of the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I have another interview from Fan Expo 2017, chatting with Fred Kennedy. Fred is a radio host at 102.1 The Edge in Toronto, a TV host, and a comic book writer. In this interview, Fred talks about finishing up the second trade paperback of The Fourth Planet, along with his upcoming project with First Nations artist Kyle Charles about the very serious topic of human trafficking. Fred also discusses working with Chapter House Comics and the trials and tribulations of publishing in Canada. But before I go further, I encourage you to like this podcast on iTunes and definitely check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website. Like it on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram so you can discover a lot more information about Canadian comic book creators and supporters. And now, my chat with Fred Kennedy.
Right now, I'm working on the second trade paperback for The Fourth Planet. I've got the first draft done. I'm just polishing up the dialogue and all that stuff, and Miko is already doing pages for it. It's pretty rad. Just doing some pitch work and stuff too. I just did a short for Boom for an anthology they're doing, but I can't talk about it. I don't know if I can, so I don't want to in case I get myself in trouble. Yeah. So I'm doing that with Boom, and aside from that, just grinding away whatever I can, Yeah.
What's next for you? Anything coming up on the horizon beyond the book you can't talk about?
No, I've got some pitches that I'm doing. I'm working with a very cool artist from Edmonton, Kyle Charles. He's a First Nations dude, and we both grew up in the same area, and my wife is First Nations, and we're telling a story about human trafficking and stuff. I think it's a pretty important issue, and we're in talks with Black Mask right now about that. But if Black Mask doesn't want it, we'll take it somewhere else. So I think it's a really good story, and it's a very Canadian story. So that's where all my heart and soul is right now. I want that to happen really badly, so we'll see. Fingers crossed.
But that's where most stories come from. It's like something that you truly believe in, and you want to get out, let people know.
Yeah, but those are the ones that also hurt the most. So what's the classic line Kirby says? Comics, they'll break your heart. That's always what happens. So I hope it works out. I hope it comes along because it'd be really rad, and I think it'd do really well.
Good stuff. Maybe you could talk just very briefly about distribution. You talked just now about a couple of publishers, but just overall, how do you find being a Canadian comic book creator, getting your content and your creations out to the public? Comment on that?
Well, it's a grind, but I'm with Chapter House, and the thing that I like about Chapter House is they do that for me. They've got the book in Diamond, so it sells really well in the UK, from what I'm told by the sales numbers. And that, to be honest, if I was still, when I did Teuton and it was a self-published thing, there was no way I was getting that book overseas. And you can do it, it can be done. Kagan McLeod is a really, what he did with Infinite Kung Fu, but that was a long time ago, and putting it in Diamond himself and all the costs, but I don't have the time to do that anymore. So working with Chapter House has made it easy to get my book out there. And a lot of stuff Chapter House does is very Canada-centric, which is cool. I mean, that's awesome. But nobody outside of Canada is going to buy a really Canada-centric book, whereas The Fourth Planet is really heady sci-fi. So that can sell anywhere. So that's good for me.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it, Fred.
Thank you.
Thanks to Fred for talking with me. You can discover more about Fred on Facebook at facebook.com/fearlessfred on the radio. You can also get The Fourth Planet at Chapter House Comics. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to subscribe, like, and comment on the podcast. So please send your feedback to truenorthcountrycomics@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now.